So part of the criteria of the framework report is to really look at your engagement process and how you've reached out to community. So when I talked about the strategic plan, I did a sort of a very brief overview of the engagement process, but I want to talk a little bit more about our engagement for our framework report and incorporating the feedback that we received from the peer review. So the engagement process, as I talked about before, involved, an online portion and in-person focus groups. Engagement sessions were open to everybody and available through an online medium, and we advertised in-person focus group opportunities. Information and results are shared on the website and at the public board meetings. And it's used to make changes to the implementation plan for the upcoming school year. One thing that was asked of us in our feedback was to break out who was participating in our engagement. And you'll see that I have put a corner box in there in the 3 engagement sessions specific to the strategic plan, one being the fall strategic plan, the budget consultation, and the spring strategic plan. And I broke out who participated in our online engagement. And you can see that our parents are our largest participants in our engagement. I would like us to focus a little bit more on engaging our students in our feedback. Student voice is really, really important. And I think that that needs to be an area of focus for us next year, is to get more student participation. The online portion of the rights holders and stakeholders is a little bit lower. However, I did 2 focus groups with online rights holders and stakeholders who had an opportunity to participate in person. And I believe that that is impacted here. And you will see teachers are also a large participant. But when you look at these numbers, considering we have 800 teachers, it's quite low. So I'm hoping that this framework report will sort of inspire us to talk about the importance of the engagement, and voice really matters. In addition to our engagement for the online focused on strategic plan, as outlined in our work plan and the special advisor's recommendation, an additional engagement happened with the Indigenous community. We asked a question: what are the best ways for us to communicate, engage with you to ensure your voice is heard and a part of the success planning for Indigenous children? Tell us how we can support Indigenous children with SD 57 on their pathway to success. We heard from over 253 parents, grandparents, guardians, and community members. So we know that folks are willing to participate in the engagement, but considering the size of our learning community, we're hoping for some higher numbers next year. Again, acknowledging that the way we're doing engagement has changed so much over the past year, it's going to take us a bit to make this a part of our culture, but it's work that I want to focus on. The second page I'm going to just gloss over because it is just a summary of our strategic plan. What I really want to get to is our results. So in the framework report, you are required to report out on some specific measures that are determined for you. You talk about the strategies that you used in the current year, and then the adjustments to the strategies for the upcoming year that you are going to make as a result of your data. So you can see here, we've got a list of strategies, and we have a lot of strategies going in the areas of intellectual development. And the outcome is students will meet or exceed literacy and numeracy expectations for each grade. And the list of strategies are there. I'm not going to read them out to you. The additional piece of data that wasn't in our framework last year is looking at cohort data. So looking at our grade 4 students' FSAs and to see how they performed in their grade 7 FSA. And that's in the corner at the bottom beside the grade 7 FSA on track or extending for literacy. So you'll notice that our grade 4s from the 2017-18 school year, when they were in grade 7, there was a 5% increase in their literacy. For the grade 4s in the 2018-2019 year, we actually saw a little bit of a decrease in their literacy for the FSAs in the 21-22 school year. And that has also been broken out for Indigenous learners. We've committed to a focus on increasing outcomes for Indigenous learners, children in care.
Sorry.
That's funny. Sorry. And children with diverse abilities and disabilities. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for laughing, because it was a little bit funny. Tracking cohorts of data really helps us tell the story of the learning experience for a student and a group of students. And that is something that I hope that we can do more of. And I know our grad coaches have spent a significant amount of time doing that, but I really wanted to include it in our frame report. So if we know the students in grade 4, 54% were meeting literacy outcomes, we didn't see much gains, which would tell me that our interventions aren't working. The next page I want to talk to you about is the addition of a couple of pieces of evidence that are district-based. Feedback we received from our peer review was that we didn't have multiple scan of multiple resources. And we acknowledge that that was the very first year of our strategic plan and that we really didn't have anything that we needed to. Our district collected additional information for reading, for numeracy, and other areas that I'll talk about in a minute. We continue to notice our reading measured by FSAs and grade 10 literacy is lower. We also have concerns around our children in care and our Indigenous and the Indigenous learners. We utilized a district collection of the benchmark assessment system, the BAS data, to look at another source of reading levels. This data is consistent with what we're noticing, with the exception of grade 2. So as you look across that chart, you will notice something's different with our grade 2. So we are actually have some questions about that, and we will do some further exploration. But what this type of reporting does is it presents data in a different way and causes those curious questions. We're also asked to report out in a distinctions-based, and that is acknowledging Indigenous, non-Indigenous. And we're really looking to identify Métis and First Nations. Inuit would be included. We have a very low population that I cannot report on, as well as status on reserve is too low. The data is masked and I cannot share it. But what I have been able to do is roll up on reserve, off reserve as First Nations and Métis and separate that. And Sylvia, that's for you, because this is data you've been asking for. So you can see here for our reading levels across the grades as measured, our reading is low. What I want to tell you about the BAS assessment is this assessment has a very high bar. This is one of those assessments where the standard is quite high, but that is one that we wish to achieve and work towards. So it is the tool we would like to use for measurement. As this is the first year of our strategic plan, we're monitoring the impacts of our strategies over the next 5 years. We do know that we have started a lot of work over the course of the year, and it is going to take time to see the impacts. But we also know where the focus goes, the energy flows. And if we put focus here, the energy will go there as well. The second piece of new evidence that I'd like to draw your attention to is the early years evaluation we call the I assessment. And research has shown that the skills and the domains assessed are related to children's literacy development and their success at school. This assessment really looks at how students experience kindergarten. So there's a fall assessment done by the teacher on these domains, and then a spring assessment done. And students are categorized as significant difficulty, some difficulty, or appropriate development. We assess the 5 of our most vulnerable schools using this measure. What I'm proud to say, and you can see this, the numbers of students with significant difficulty in the fall decreased dramatically in the spring. And you will see that the number of students appropriate development in those domains went up in the spring. So there are some successes there for our early years and our kindergarten teachers. And we have more questions. The I assessment comes with lots of strategies that we can access for teachers to use to help develop the skills in this area. And I think perhaps we need to look at what those are and how do we extend that to some of our kids in our early primary grades who may have some similar difficulties with these domains. Like I said, when you have more information, you just have more questions. Moving on, some of the adjustments you'll see to our strategies after year one. We're going to continue to work on what we had happening for this school year. This is a year 1 and 2 plan, but we've added, thanks to our Indigenous Education Department, some additional grad coach time to offer more support for Indigenous students and guide academic supports should it be needed. I want to talk about numeracy. And this is always a difficult conversation for us, as we know our numeracy results are low. As much as I would like to say it's reassuring to say they're low across the province, it doesn't make me feel better, because I think we need to measure numeracy to ourselves and not the province, and be okay with being close to what the province has for numeracy. So I know our curriculum department has invested a ton of interventions into numeracy for this year and the coming year, with some significant changes coming. Again, this data duplicates the format of the previous slide where we started tracking our cohorts. So we can look at that learning journey of numeracy. And again, our strategies for intervention for struggling learners clearly aren't working right now. So we have some adjustments to do. We have set some lofty goals of increasing our numeracy levels. Some of our additional strategies will include focusing on a district-wide numeracy collection, as well as an inquiry project K-8 with additional supported professional learning by Dr. Marianne Small. So we have focused in an area of numeracy to help provide more supports. I want to talk a little bit about the numeracy assessment. Again, we were asked to have some other measures for numeracy, and we collected SNAP data. And I chose to focus on the understanding and solving strand of that data. And what you can see here is parallel to what we're seeing with our FSA. Once again, our kids are below what we would expect or would want them. More questions just surface. Some of the work that we'll be doing over the course of the year, we'll be looking at individual school data and seeing if there's any pockets of achievement that we can replicate, duplicate, and look further to see how we can spread that throughout the district. And a big question that we have here is, how do we shift the mindsets around numeracy to move from mathematics to numeracy? And that seems to be a continuous theme, especially when we look to our numeracy graduation assessment. The kids will tell us they are not prepared to write the numeracy assessment. It is still very much a math-focused classroom. So how do we move from being able to do math to the mindset of understanding numbers and the application of numbers, which is numeracy? And that will be our work as we go forward. The next bit of data that I'd like to talk to you about is our transition, students transitioning. We noticed last year that our students transitioning from grade 11 to 12 was lower than we would ask it to be. And we wanted to set some goals around that transition of 11 to 12 to go up. The light blue line is our students who entered grade 12 this year, who were grade 11s last year. And you can see that our transition data actually went up for our 11s to 12s. So we just have some more questions around that. Why are students staying in school? What is different for our 11s to 12s? Is it some of our programming that we're offering, or are we just providing better supports to keep our students in school? And you'll see there is an increase across the board. for all of our subpopulations, which is promising. Moving on to the next section, which is our human and social development section. We had a lot of strategies going on this year in this area. Again, this is pulled from our student learning survey, and I do not have our 21-22 data rolled up yet to incorporate into our FESL report, but the story is the same. Less than 30% of our students, more than 30% of our students do not feel safe at school across the board. Less than 50% of our students feel as though they belong, and less than 60% of our students feel like they are welcomed in our school. Again, looking forward to our data from this year to see if any of our strategies have had an impact in any capacity. To our adults that care about me, again, the numbers are not positive. We've added some additional measures this year, and those measures are our middle years development instrument that we administered as a strategy at the grade 5 and 8 level. This measures assets and experiences where students can demonstrate thriving. In the report, in the digital version, there is a link to our entire report for grade 5 and 8 at the district level. That will be accessible to folks if they're interested in looking at that. The data provides the school and the district with valuable information to use as we look to provide resources and supports to our schools and students. The first measure is our grade 5 and our grade 8 that talk about assets. And the MDI measures assets in the fact that having positive adult relationships, having positive peer relationships, being engaged in after-school activities, and nutrition and sleep are important assets to students being successful. You'll notice our grade 5s, 57% of our students would be determined as having appropriate nutrition and sleep. And as I looked further and did a deeper dive into this data, sleep is a problem for our students in our district at the grade 5 and the grade 8 level. And I think as I'm looking at people in schools right now, there's probably an agreement to that. Our kids are not getting enough sleep. You'll notice for our grade 8 students, their adult relationships go down, their participation in after-school activities goes down, and the asset of having appropriate nutrition and sleep goes down. MDI states that children's sense of safety and belonging at school has been shown to foster their school success in many ways. When children have positive experiences at school, they are more likely to feel they belong within their school, feel more motivated and engaged, and have higher academic achievement. Children who feel a sense of connection and belonging to school are also less likely to engage in high-risk behaviors. Understanding children's school experiences improves the ability to both create and cultivate school environments that are safe, caring, and supportive. Through our work this year, we've identified that many of our students seem to fall off track at the grade 8 level when they transition to high school. This provides us with the evidence that the school experience for grade 8 students is of concern. More analysis of this data needs to be done next year to help us determine how to best place those resources and supports. When you look at the next set of data from the MDI, they outline the school experiences as having a positive academic self-concept, students' belief about themselves in their academic abilities, the climate, the overall tone of the environment, the way teachers and students interact and how students treat each other, and school belonging is the degree to which children feel connected and valued at their school. And you can see 65% of the students have a high sense at grade 8 of feeling like they can learn. But you'll see 29% of our students have a high sense of a positive school climate, and 31% of the students have a high sense of feeling like they belong, which is consistent with our student learning survey data. So I'm grateful that we did the strategy of the grade 5 and 8 MDI, and our work will be to work with schools. Every school received an individual report for their school's results. And I think this data can really help us focus and target our interventions and our strategies to help our students, because we know if we're helping our kids with their human and social development, we will see better outcomes for kids. The last section in our framework report is around career development. And you can see our list of strategies there, but we have added some additional information beyond our grad rates and our post-secondary. We had a strategy to utilize the My Blueprint Education Planner to help our kids look at their pathways towards careers before they entered high school. Through the work of our Skills, Trades, and Careers Department, there's a table there that shows you the percentage of students that have a Blueprint Education Planner started that will carry with them throughout their rest of their schooling experience. We also took a look at the number of participants in our Skills, Trades, and Careers programs. And you can see that we have 77 students in our Trades Dual Credit, or CTC program with CNC. We had 188 students at some type of work experience opportunity this year. 28 students did type of career exploration events, and we had 64 students in a trades sampler. I think given our student population, those numbers are a little bit low. With the exception of the CTC program, where we have a limited number of seats, there are opportunities here for us to add more. We celebrate our CTC program in partnership with CNC, and we are working, and I have a typo there, to develop a technology dual credit program with both CNC and UMBC for the 22-23 school year. And I wanted to highlight that as a strategy, and that's been some work that Mr. Karpenko has been working on with both those post-secondary institutions. Not all kids are interested in electrical and plumbing and carpentry, and a lot of kids are very interested in careers in the world of technology. And this is an opportunity for us to provide a type of sampler for students in that field. We are hopeful that Advanced Ed will support this in a way that we can offer it. And we worked really hard to align it with our semesters as opposed to the post-secondary semesters. So it is truly, if we're successful with getting this, a partnership between the post-secondaries and school district, which is something we've been working on for a couple of years. All right, moving on. Our measures that we have and we're required to report out on is our 5-year graduation completion rates. And you can see, you know, there is a slight, if you look back at that, you can see a slight upward trend, but we're still below the provincial average. We're still seeing the gap with Indigenous learners, students in care, and students with diverse abilities. We do want to acknowledge, though, through our examination of the How Are We Doing report, that the number of adult dogwoods are going down. So when we used to look at our data from 3 years ago for our completion rates, that would include regular dogwoods and adult dogwoods, and we would see more adult dogwoods. But what we're noticing is that more students are achieving regular dogwoods as opposed to the adult dogwood. And that is something that we've been talking about with the outcomes team as we explore our How Are We Doing report. In addition, we've included some data looking at courses that students are taking. We're examining the courses students are taking in their graduation program years. Many courses, although meet graduation requirements, limit students' access to post-secondary options. And I've got an example. We are seeing an overrepresentation of Indigenous students in courses that limit options. So I want you to look at, in that little chart, Workplace Math 10, unfortunately, is not a prereq for many post-secondary options. You will see that 50% of Indigenous students, our Indigenous population, take workplace math, where only 20% of the non-Indigenous population take workplace math. I want to look at foundations in Pre-Calc 10, which is the prereq for Pre-Calculus 11. 25% of Indigenous students take foundations in pre-calculus, yet 62% of non-Indigenous students take take foundations and Pre-Calc 10. And then we move into Pre-Calc 11, which is really, when you look at prereqs for post-secondary, there are two: English 12, or English First Peoples 12, and Pre-Calc 11. Those are the biggies. So when we hear families saying our kids need to upgrade, they're absolutely correct. 22% of Indigenous students take Pre-Calc 11, yet 43% of non-Indigenous students take Pre-Calc 11. We need to do some work in this area, but again, when you put a focus there, so do you put your energy. The last piece of additional information that is very much district-based is the work of our grad coaches. And this is moving from red at risk to green on track. And this was a summary of the information that was presented at EPPC last month, school by school. We rolled it up at a district level. Our grad coaches are working with students who are on the grad pathways and through extensive file reviews going right back to kindergarten, identified our students fall off track at grade 8, and we're tracking their grad programs to help them be successful. What we've done here is we've taken each grade and we've looked at the number of students who were red at risk, moving to green. And you'll see for our grade 10s from fall to spring, we saw a decrease of 22 students across the district who were at risk. We saw an increase of 27 students who were on track to graduate across the district. When we look at our grade 11s, we saw 27 fewer kids at risk and an increase of 31 students on track to graduate. And for our grade 12s, which was the primary focus of this year, we said, let's start with our grade 12s. There was a decrease of 60 students who were at risk of not graduating and an increase of 38 students who are on track to graduate and 22 students who identified they want an extra year to meet those grad requirements, which encompasses the 60. This is a celebration. This is an example of when you put focus, interventions, and strategies into an area, you can make a difference. The last piece of evidence that is required in the framework report is students transitioning to post-secondary. We can see here that students who choose to go to post-secondary immediately following high school sits at about 48%. Yet students transitioning to post-secondary within 3 years moves up to 63%. This just creates more questions for me. And this is some things that I would like us to explore. I think I have many questions as to why students aren't going. We can hypothesize and we can have a hunch about why kids aren't going right away, but I'd really like to hear from our students and how can we access that information? How can we use an exit type survey for our grade 12s where we can ask them what their plans are? Are you choosing to go to post-secondary? Yes, no, why not? There's a way for us to gather this information. And I know we're working really hard with our post-secondary institutions within our community to create better seamless transitions from our system into their system. And maybe there's some evidence and some data in there that we can capture that will help us do that. So finally, in closing, the adjustments to the strategies, looking for additional skills, traits, careers, additional grad coach time, continuing to develop our learner support, more use of my blueprint, and really focusing on that data and asking some big questions. You will see we've committed to a similar continuous review cycle that we had this year, as I believe we've been able to create a bit of a culture of engagement. And I'd like to keep that consistent so that we can see that be part of our school community. One other criteria for the framework report is that it can only be 10 pages. I'm going to be okay submitting to the ministry an 11-page report. And I hope that the board will support me in doing so. And that's the end of that presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Very comprehensive, thorough, and lots of data for us to really absorb and think about and move forward with. Any questions from the committee? Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. Thanks for the reports. Both of the reports, Amy, that's great. And I'm just thinking about the last part where where it talks about adjustments to the strategies for next year. And one thing I know that I think all of the Indigenous grad coaches said in their presentation to us was that they felt that there was more need for more mental health support for students. I'm glad to see that there's an increase in like additional Indigenous grad coach time. I'm not sure if that's just more of them or if that is sort of following the suggestion that quite a lot of them gave, saying we need it in grade 8, 9, 10. So maybe you can answer that, but
Yeah.
also just is there a thought about increased counseling time, increased specifically mental health support for students? So I think that's a really big reason, you know, for some of the results we're seeing.
Yeah, so in the human and social development, there is adjustment to continue to provide those mental health literacies for staff and students, and work on the mental health and as well as the compassionate systems within our schools. So we'll continue to do that, and that sits in there. In terms of the grad coach, more time has been added. It may not be in the form of more people, but if they had one block, some of our schools will have 4 blocks of grad coach time, so they will be full-time.
3 schools will have full-time.
3 schools have full-time grad coaches.
So does that mean with more grades as well then?
They'll be able to support more.
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions? Anyone on Zoom? No?
My presentation at the board will be more condensed. This was very long, but I felt that EPPC was the appropriate place to bring a more comprehensive report forward. And I will have a condensed version for the public board meeting in a PowerPoint presentation.
Don't bring PJs, is that what you're saying?
I'll do my very best.
It is a very robust agenda we have for next Wednesday. By the way, our board meeting is next Wednesday instead of next Tuesday. We, as a board, decided to move the board meeting in respect to National Indigenous Peoples Day, which a lot of us will be taking part in next Tuesday. But the board meeting is next Wednesday at 6 o'clock here in the boardroom and then online as well. Any other questions for Superintendent?
We're good.
Thank you very much. As I said, very comprehensive and thorough, and lots of data and information for us to absorb. So with that, that brings us to the end, and look at that, it's 5:30, so I wasn't quite living up to my promise of an hour, but hour and a half.
I did pretty good.
You did. You did.
And just want to wish everyone a restful and good summer. Who knows what the weather will be throwing us. We had a gorgeous day today. Boy, if summer is just like today, that's a pretty good summer. Perfect. 21, 22 degrees, a little bit of wind and sun. It'd be gorgeous. So have a great summer. And like I say, this committee will be back in likely a different form in the fall under a new name. So we look forward to that. But that'll be decided next Wednesday at our board meeting. So thanks, everybody, and have a great evening.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, go ahead.
Shocker. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous work that's happened in our district this year. And although when we look at our results, it can feel a little bit deflating for us. But I think we need to remember we just started this 5-year journey. And when you look at what's happening within this district, we need to be very proud of that work and remember to continue that passion and that work that we're doing. Everybody is working so hard, and it is acknowledged and it is recognized. And we know we're not going to make the changes overnight, but we also realize and celebrate the fact that I think, you know, to take a quote from an elder, we're all in our canoes, different canoes, but we're paddling in the same river, going in the same direction. And that's how we're going to make the change. So I just really needed to say that because I know some of this was really hard to digest, and I needed to acknowledge that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for saying that, and I agree wholeheartedly. It's going to take time.
I think we'll be surprised with the data in the fall.
I hope so. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you